What happens when a royal exit meets a desperate need for Hollywood validation? The answer lives in a Montecito kitchen where a duchess tried to sell us flour sprinkles and a make-believe lifestyle. Welcome to the Star Report, where today we're breaking down the cringe moments that ruined Meghan Markle's Netflix show forever. The flour sprinkles delusion.
In this season, Meghan is still trying to make flour sprinkles happen.
What was that you just added?
Flour sprinkles. I love them.
Wow, that's the gayest I've seen in a long time.
Every lifestyle guru needs a signature item. Ina Garten had good vanilla, Martha Stewart had a perfect pastry crust, and Meghan Markle desperately wanted flour sprinkles. She introduced this concept to her guest, Tan France, with the manic energy of a woman trying to force a trend into existence through sheer willpower. She tossed dried petals onto a dish and stared at him, waiting for the applause. The silence was loud. Tan, a seasoned television personality, looked at the dish and bluntly called it the gayest thing he had seen in a long time. Meghan laughed, but the visual told a different story. She threw her head back, pressed her finger to her mouth, and posed. It was a calculated smirk designed for a thumbnail, a total detachment from genuine human interaction. She wanted to be the relatable domestic goddess, but she looked like an alien who just read a manual on how human women giggle. The audacity to present crushed-up potpourri as a culinary innovation was wild. She needed her audience to believe she possessed a unique, whimsical eye for detail. The reality was a desperate attempt to manufacture a viral moment for TikTok, a moment that died the second it left her kitchen. That frantic need to manufacture drama spilled over from the kitchen directly into her romantic history, turning a luxury vacation into a fake survival thriller. The Botswana tent theatrics.
And of course, cue the theatrics to make the story extra believable.
There's like, what is that outside the, what is that outside the tent? That's an elephant. Are we gonna be safe? Yeah, you're safe. Oh. Okay.
Where did I hear this sob story before? Oh, right.
Meghan recounted her third date with Harry in Botswana. She set the scene in a little tent, trying to sell the narrative that she was a rugged, outdoorsy girl deeply in love. Suddenly, she launched into a theatrical recreation of a supposed threat outside their canvas walls. Her eyes went wide, she dropped her voice to a frantic whisper, and she gasped, "Are we going to be safe?" The performance was agonizing. They stayed in a luxury, highly secured encampment covered by Vogue, complete with armed guards and five-star amenities. Yet Meghan needed the audience to view her as a damsel in a survivalist nightmare, braving the African wilderness. The cringe radiated from the absolute identical nature of this performance to her other trauma stories. The frantic eye movements, the breathy voice, the manufactured panic. It was the exact same script she used when complaining about the paparazzi or her home security. She treated a rustling bush outside a five-star glamping site like a scene from Jurassic Park. She demanded admiration for her bravery, completely ignoring the fact that she was under the protection of a British prince and a highly trained security detail. The delusion required to look into a camera and sell that fear as authentic was staggering. This total lack of genuine emotion became even more glaring when the conversation shifted from fake wilderness threats to actual human children. The stank face empathy gap.
Anyway, Tan France talks about how he needs his kids, and if he doesn't see them for a couple of days, his heart would be broken. Meghan is then tight-lipped, looks down, and nods, and a part of me feels like she maybe felt a little called out, because for a long time, she was jetting off multiple times without the kids for days at a time. She then says,
Oh, I know. The longest I went without being around our kids was almost 3 weeks.
Oh yeah.
I was not well.
Oh yeah.
oh, I wonder what she's talking about.
During a quiet moment, Tan France opened up about the pain of leaving his children for work. He spoke vulnerably about his heartbreaking when he was away, a universally understood parental struggle. The camera caught Meghan's face as she listened. The mask slipped completely. She stared at him with a dead-eyed, tight-lipped expression. She looked entirely uninterested, bordering on annoyed, that someone else was occupying the emotional center of the room. She couldn't let his moment breathe. Within seconds, she hijacked the conversation, loudly proclaiming that the longest she ever went without her kids was 3 weeks. The context made it a PR nightmare. Those 3 weeks were during the Queen's funeral, a period where Meghan paraded in dark makeup and delivered a highly criticized, single-tier performance for the global press. She used Tan's genuine vulnerability as a stepping stone to remind everyone of her own highly publicized sacrifice. She lacked the basic social awareness to simply nod and validate her guests' feelings. Everything had to circle back to her trauma, her timeline, and her endurance. That constant need to control the emotional narrative manifested physically in the most bizarre, over-engineered gift exchange ever caught on film. The masala daba setup.
Because I know you are a spice lover.
Ooh.
Kiss, kiss.
I even like the little,
Kiss, kiss,
the little
kiss.
thing you put this in. That's so cute.
She wrapped it with a scarf, and of course, it cuts to her telling us a whole story about how she got here.
This wrapping is called pierogi, and it's honestly so simple to do.
Go to shops and I find something that I think is just extraordinary. I don't know who it's going to be for, but I know that I need to get it.
She tells the story about a year ago. She found this in a shop in North Carolina, and I guess Tan France was the perfect person to gift it to because he loves spices.
Hello, spice container. This is a masala daba. That's what this is called.
So she gifts Tan France a masala daba because why wouldn't she have a random thing lying around her house that she bought with absolutely no intention to use? Tan is so touched, he's like, oh my god, this is vintage, and gives her a big hug, and then she rambles about the story again.
Said you were coming and you love spice. I was like, that's so funny. I had this thing that I had bought.
It's a very sweet gesture, and Tan is of course so touched, and she's staring at him with her tight-lipped smile like, yes, mission accomplished.
Meghan handed Tan a heavily wrapped package, launching into a convoluted monologue about a Japanese wrapping technique called furoshiki. Inside was a vintage Indian spice box, a masala daba. She claimed she bought it a year ago in North Carolina and just kept it in a closet, waiting for the perfect person to give it to. The second-hand embarrassment was lethal. The audience was expected to believe a duchess randomly bought specialized vintage Indian cookware in a random southern state and hoarded it just in case a British-Pakistani fashion designer eventually agreed to come on her Netflix cooking show. It was a painfully transparent PR move designed to combat the rampant allegations of her being a nightmare boss. She needed to be seen on global television as the ultimate thoughtful, quirky, generous friend. When Tan hugged her, her face froze into a tight, self-satisfied smirk. She stared directly past him, mentally checking a box on her image rehabilitation to-do list. The interaction contained zero warmth. It was a transactional exchange of goods for good press. She weaponized thoughtfulness, turning a simple gift into a clunky, unbelievable monument to her own supposed grace. If the vintage spice box was her attempt at culinary sophistication, her next craft project proved her taste level was firmly stuck in kindergarten. The tragic pocket squares. The lifestyle genre relies on aspiration. The host does things the viewer wishes they could do. Meghan decided the peak of aspiration was hand-dyeing pocket squares using a technique that resembled a botched summer camp tie-dye station. She held up a muddy, black and gray smeared rag, smiled proudly, and called it an experiment. The true cringe arrived when she handed these tragic scraps of fabric to world-renowned chef David Chang. The camera captured his face as he unrolled the fabric. He looked horrified. His eyes darted around, his smile strained to the breaking point, and the silence in the room grew suffocating. He politely choked out a confused response while the woman next to him flatly stated she would just wear it in the kitchen. Meghan stood there, beaming, completely failing to read the room. She expected awe. She demanded reverence for ruining a perfectly good piece of cotton. She framed this disaster as a lesson in finding new things we may or may not be good at, forcing highly accomplished professionals to coddle her ego over a garbage-bound craft project. She treated grown adults like parents forced to stick a terrible finger painting on the fridge. Her inability to accept reality or constructive feedback extended far beyond bad dye jobs, bleeding into her bizarre defense against her critics. The spaghetti defense.
I think oftentimes the negative voices, are they saying negative things and then secretly going home and making single skillet spaghetti?
When confronted with the overwhelmingly negative feedback her projects constantly received, Meghan offered a theory that defied logic. She smiled smugly and suggested that the very people criticizing her were secretly going home, pulling out a pan, and cooking her single skillet spaghetti. The delusion was breathtaking. She genuinely believed her cultural impact was so massive and her pasta recipe so irresistible that her fiercest critics lived a double life obsessed with her domestic skills. The reality of the internet age is ruthless. If a recipe is good, it goes viral. Nobody on TikTok was making Meghan Markle's basic spaghetti. There was no cultural craze. There was only silence. Yet, she sat in her multi-million-dollar kitchen and crafted a protective fantasy where she was the undisputed queen of the culinary world, envied by the masses. She couldn't process failure or genuine dislike. She had to reframe every piece of negative feedback as masked jealousy. It was main character syndrome elevated to a psychiatric level. She needed the world to be obsessed with her, even if she had to invent the obsession out of thin air. That fragile, carefully constructed ego was violently punctured minutes later by a guest who simply didn't care about her Hollywood past. The basic cable ambush.
One of the funniest moments on the show is when one of her guests, Payman Bahmani Bailey, low-key shaded the hell out of her. She asks him,
How did you get into mixology?
and right before he answers, she pulls this random face, closing her eyes and pressing her lips together for no clear reason. He then reveals that he was a former lawyer.
So I was a lawyer in New York.
To which she cuts him off and says,
Did you watch Suits?
He's so taken aback, you can see it in the way he just stares at her, before he says,
No.
Meghan then does this unhinged open-mouthed smile laugh, where no sound even comes out, and it feels completely forced, especially since right after that, he says,
I don't watch basic cable.
She continues the fake laugh, which you know is forced because she's like squealing and then is like, I love it.
Meghan sat across from Payman, a mixologist who casually mentioned his past career as a lawyer in New York. Meghan's eyes lit up. She saw an opening. Without missing a beat, she leaned in and asked, "Did you watch Suits?" The desperation reeked. She fished for a compliment, hoping to force a guest to fawn over her single mid-level acting credit. Payman stared at her, completely unbothered, and hit her with a devastating flat no. He followed it up by stating he didn't watch basic cable. The psychological collapse that followed was a masterpiece of cringe. Meghan's jaw dropped into an unhinged, silent, open-mouthed laugh. She threw her head around, her shoulders shaking, but absolutely no sound escaped her throat. It was a terrifying simulation of amusement designed to cover up a lethal dose of humiliation. She got publicly rejected on her own show. Her guests basically called her former career irrelevant, and she had no script to handle it. She squealed a fake, "I love it," while her eyes burned with the realization that outside her echo chamber, her Hollywood legacy meant absolutely nothing. To recover from the blow of being deemed basic, she immediately pivoted to proving how cultured and decadent her childhood was, completely forgetting her own lies in the process. The Thai iced tea rewrite.
That Meghan explains why she's making something and refers to a time in her childhood, and I guess she does this to pretend like whatever we're watching is authentic to her. Anyway, at some point, she's making Thai iced tea, and she gives us this story.
You know, Thai Town is really popular in LA, and I used to go a lot when I was a kid. Always get a Thai iced tea because it feels so decadent and dessert-like, so even as a child, you go, that's awesome.
Which is interesting because it kind of goes against the story that she was so poor growing up. She had to work at the ripe age of 13 at the Humphrey yogurt shop and lived off TV dinners and the occasional treat from Sizzler's $4.99 salad bar that made her feel lucky.
For years, the cornerstone of Meghan's relatable brand was her tragic, poverty-stricken childhood. She sold the royal family and the public a Dickensian sob story about working at a yogurt shop at 13, surviving on TV dinners, and treating a $4.99 Sizzler salad bar like a luxury vacation. Then, she stood in her Netflix kitchen making a drink and casually blew her entire backstory to pieces. She reminisced about growing up in Los Angeles, constantly going to Thai Town as a kid, and ordering Thai iced tea because it felt so decadent and dessert-like. The slip-up was monumental. You don't get to play the starving urchin scraping together nickels for lettuce, while simultaneously waxing poetic about your frequent decadent childhood trips for specialty ethnic beverages. She wanted the aesthetic of a cultured foodie upbringing for her cooking show, completely forgetting she had already cashed in the poor girl chips for global sympathy. She fabricated her history based on whatever room she was standing in. The truth was malleable, shaped entirely by whatever narrative made her look best under the current lighting. This obsession with sounding worldly and cultured led to an even more bizarre fabrication regarding her linguistic skills: the Spanish lisp fabrication.
Saying that because she spent more time in Argentina, she's embarrassed to speak fluent Spanish.
You know I used to live in Spain.
I know.
I spent more time in Argentina, funny enough. That's why I get embarrassed to speak Spanish in front of you, because I have such an Argentinian accent.
She then repeats what Chef Jose Andres tells her to say.
Hola, Jose, ¿cómo estás? Todo bien?
Cool.
Ah, mira vos.
Yeah.
And then says that because of her time spent in Spain, her accent gained a lisp to it.
Then you spend this time in Spain, and I ended up with that plus a list.
In a kitchen segment with chef Jose Andres, Meghan decided she needed to prove she was a citizen of the world. She nervously explained that she was embarrassed to speak Spanish in front of him because she possessed a thick Argentinian accent. She then claimed she later spent time in Spain, which resulted in her developing a lisp. The audacity to invent a complex, multi-continental linguistic history on the spot was wild. Background checks and family statements confirmed her time in Argentina was a 5-week study program heavily funded by her father and uncle. Nobody develops a permanent, paralyzing regional accent during a 5-week college trip. Furthermore, claiming she magically absorbed a Castilian lisp on top of it was a linguistic impossibility that insulted the intelligence of anyone watching. She stared at the acclaimed chef, desperately hoping he would validate her fake international flair. She needed to be seen as a sophisticated, fluent intellectual. Instead, she sounded like a first-year language student making excuses for a bad grade. She weaponized geography to make herself sound interesting, assuming the audience would never fact-check a duchess. When the fake accents failed to secure the necessary adoration, she devolved into infantile behavior to force a quirky moment. The elementary school song.
Used to be a song I learned in elementary school. Fish and chips and vinegar, 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 fish and chips and vinegar, pepper, 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 salt.
Many people felt like she was trolling the Brits because fish and chips is a big thing for them, while for us Americans, we call it fries. But honestly, what 40-something-year-old woman is still referencing songs from elementary school? I'm in my 20s and I don't even remember songs like that, let alone tie my everyday life back to grade school. Yet Meghan does it constantly on this show, which just makes it feel like she's making things up as she goes along. Take a look at the clip with music.
Used to be a song I learned in elementary school. Fish and chips and vinegar, 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 fish and chips and vinegar.
There is a specific type of cringe that occurs when a grown adult tries to act like a precocious toddler for attention. Meghan reached the zenith of this behavior while making a dish, suddenly breaking into a bizarre rhythmic chant. She loudly sang,
Fish and chips and vinegar, 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 fish and chips and vinegar.
She claimed it was a song she learned in elementary school. The silence from the crew was palpable. A woman in her 40s, holding a multi-million-dollar production contract, stood in a luxury kitchen singing a nursery rhyme while shaking imaginary salt shakers. It was a desperate, flailing attempt to go viral. She wanted a GIF. She wanted a trending TikTok audio. She wanted people to say, "Look how silly and down-to-earth she is." Instead, it looked like a psychological break. She trolled her British in-laws with the fish and chips reference while simultaneously treating her audience like toddlers. The heavy, upbeat background music the editors desperately slapped over the footage couldn't hide the awkwardness of the moment. She manufactured a personality trait on the spot, confusing childishness with charm. That utter disregard for natural human behavior culminated in a final, freezing display of aesthetic vanity. The freezing beach aesthetic. The core promise of a lifestyle show is comfort and aspiration. Meghan's final betrayal of this concept happened on a beach. She dragged Tan France out to the California coast to eat their culinary creations. The camera pulled back to reveal a miserable scene. The wind whipped violently, the sky was gray, and both of them looked like they were freezing to death in their thin layers. Meghan huddled over her food, shivering, her hair blowing wildly across her face. Yet, she smiled through chattering teeth, forcing out dialogue about how glad she was that he came to visit. She subjected a guest to physical discomfort entirely because she needed the beach picnic aesthetic for the B-roll footage. It was the ultimate metaphor for her entire post-royal brand. The reality was miserable, forced, and entirely unnatural, but the framing was supposed to look beautiful. She prioritized the camera lens over actual human comfort. She didn't care if the food was cold or her guest was miserable. She got her shot. She proved, in that freezing, windy moment, that the lifestyle she was selling didn't actually exist off-camera. It was all a set built on a foundation of shivering guests and fake smiles. The Star Report specializes in breaking down the exact moments the PR machinery grinds to a halt. Meghan Markle's cooking show wasn't just a failure of television production. It was a grueling, 6-episode exposure of an ego desperately trying to find a mirror that would lie to it. From inventing imaginary elephants to forcing A-list chefs to praise ruined fabric, she showcased a terrifying inability to exist in the real world. She wanted to be the new Martha Stewart. She wanted to be a relatable mother, a worldly linguist, and a culinary genius. Instead, she captured the exact moments the public saw through the furoshiki wrapping. The basic cable comments, the stank faces, the frantic cover-ups of her own lies, they all built an undeniable profile of a woman who demands the world's attention, but has absolutely no idea what to do with it once she gets it. Did the silent, open-mouthed scream over her suit's rejection make you physically wince, or did the vintage spice box setup win the award for the most calculated moment in television history? Let's talk about it in the comments, and if you haven't subscribed to the Star Report yet, now's your chance.